Good morning everyone. It's a rather chilly Monday the 11th of May. I'm fitting external lights to the crafter, and I have bought these, or I bought 3 of these very nicely made scene lights. They're quite heavy, and they've got a good solid aluminium body with heatsink on the back there. They mount flush on the van, and they're about £28 each, I think I paid for these. The ones that I have fitted onto WOS are manufactured by a company called Labcraft. They're brighter than the ones I've bought, but these are anything between about £75 and £90 each. I wanted to replicate some of the features of these Labcraft lights. They are very strong, they can take being sideswiped by branches and things, they're securely fitted to the vehicle, and they're quite bright. So the ones that I have bought are also pretty solid. They should be able to take a few knocks, whereas something cheaper made out of plastic could easily get knocked off. So these are 1000 lumens. I think the ones up there on that van are 1200 lumens. They're nicely bright. Now I intend to fit them just to the... I'm going to actually use that centre bar there. We can see where the sliding window is. I use the centre bar for the centre of the light. I know a lot of people fit these sort of dead centre of the van, but I don't want to obscure it when the door's sliding open. And because I've got that centre bar there from the sliding window, it will look neater, in my mind at least, it will look neater if I mount it directly above that. I also intend to mount one here, just above the passenger door, so that you get a reasonable spread of light on this side of the van. And the last one is going on one of the rear doors, and I will be wiring these up in the same way as I've done on WOS, so that I can operate them from the switch, and also so that they are operated by the reversing lights, because I find the lighting down the side of the vehicle and at the back very, very useful. I'm not currently going to put one on the driver's side at the moment. I may do later on, but right now I've only bought 3 of these, so it's 2 for this side, because we found the 2 that we've got on WOS provide really good, excellent lighting, and one on the back, similar to what I've got on WOS, just to provide that extra bit of illumination when reversing. I've also bought a light bar, a long light bar, an LED light bar, to mount on the roof of the van at the front. That's going to serve 2 purposes. Firstly, obviously, because the light bar is useful, but secondly, because it allows me to make some holes, or it justifies the reason for making some holes in the roof at the front of the van, that I can then use to secure plywood lathes to help when I come to do the insulation in the roof. Because it's a curved surface, it's an awkward surface to actually get any kind of insulation fitted to. But if I can build up a framework that's actually curved and pulled into the shape of the roof, using the bolts that are then conveniently being used to hold the light bar, then that kills 2 budgies with 1 house brick. That's my thinking anyway. Right, so time to mark out the van. Now it's going to be pretty easy to do the one at that end. I can just do it parallel with those lines. The one at this end, a bit more of a problem. The door frame, or the top of the door frame, isn't parallel with that line there, that lower line just above the glass. The light, to look right, I think needs to be level with the other one, which means I'm going to have to actually install it at a slight angle in relation to these 2 lines, the one created by the door and the one slightly above. So I'm going to experiment. I'll do it straight first of all and see if it looks right to the eye, and if not, then I may put it at a slight angle, but I don't think I'm going to put it at an angle. I think it needs to be level, basically parallel with the ground. For the purposes of alignment, it's worth pointing out that this line here is pretty much a consistent height from the windows all the way along the vehicle. It's about 50mm. But the distance between this line here and that point there varies by about 10mm from one end of the van to the other. Obviously you can see that at that end it closes up considerably, but at the end where I'm currently mounting the light, it tails off towards the rear of the vehicle. So the measurements I'm taking are from this line here. And a standard glue stick for a glue gun sits in that recess quite nicely, gives you a nice flat point to take a measurement from without juggling trying to get a measurement off the edge of that fold in the metal there. So I just taped a piece of a glue stick to here, and that gave me a point. And then I've measured up 100mm. I'm just going to do the whole thing 100mm. I've drilled one hole up there now. Sun may be a bit too bright today for doing this, but I've drilled one hole up there for now, and that is going to be used for a M4 riv nuts. They require a 6mm hole. I'm using riv nuts simply because I prefer to. I could just use self-tapping screws straight into the metal, but I quite fancy using riv nuts. To get a good rust-proof seal, I'm going to apply a bead of paint around the edge before I actually crush the thing up. That will actually seal it at the same time as I crush it up. That's the theory anyway. If I paint, I found when I paint these holes first, the mechanical fixings then seem to cut through the paint anyway. So perhaps doing it with a bit of wet paint may improve it. I don't know. The other reason for using the riv nut is it provides a slight degree of standoff. So although I'm going to use a bit of sealant on the light as well, just around this riv nut fitting and where the cabling goes through, I want to allow a bit of drainage, because otherwise I think you potentially could get a bit of pool of water, but I'll experiment more with that when I come to fit the light. That one's screwed in place, parallel with that lower line, and this one is screwed in place as well. I'm denied about this, but I decided that level to the ground looked better to my way of thinking. In other words, parallel with that low white line there, than crooked, which it would have been any other way. I've also lined up the right hand edge of the light with the door shut, just to give a point of reference. But the important thing when fitting anything like this into the side of a vehicle is where the screws come out on the other side, and I will show you that now. I could have mounted them higher up, but for this particular one at the back here, in order to get it parallel, or sorry, central with this centre bar where the window goes, I've ended up with one riv nut there and the other one hidden away behind this reinforcement plate. If I put it further up there's a possibility I'd have ended up either drilling into this piece of metal or fouling this angle or whatever. I think I would have cleared it. Looking at where the nut has come through, I would have cleared it. But you need to think about everywhere you're putting things in a vehicle, especially when you're trying to keep them parallel. Because at this end, things are a bit tighter. I've got air conditioning pipes here, so I needed to be careful when I was drilling through that I didn't end up clobbering those. And the riv nut for the light I fitted to the front of the van is about there, behind this reinforcing point. Inaccessible, so drill the hole very carefully, then probe behind it, make sure nothing's there. And the other thing I needed to take into account was the fact that where this one came through. Again, it could have easily ended up fouling metalwork behind here that that it wouldn't have been ideal. And I also need to be able to consider where the cable's coming through. So you can see here it's come through just behind this piece of sound deadening, and the cable will end up about there. However, I can't do the cabling for either of these two yet because I forgot to order any grommets. I need some little grommets. So I shall now go and drill holes for the one on the back of the van. I really only want one of these on the back of the van, and I really want it on that left-hand door because that's the one that typically stays shut when you're getting things in and out of the van. You're primarily using this door all the time. Going to have a think about this one now. Going to play around with my masking tape and see how the lines come out. There's actually quite an interesting optical illusion going on here. That glass is actually level when you put a straight line across it, and so is the crease line in that top part of the door body as well, or the door metalwork. There's a slight discrepancy in the fitting of the glass on the left, which means there is a few millimetres drop. You can actually see a few millimetres drop in that one, but it is level. So that light is 100 millimetres above the glass, and if I want to put another one on the other side, it will be in a straight line. The doors obviously are curved, but the end result is it works. I've put the light dead centre in the door. I could have moved it probably slightly to the right, but I'm just allowing for the fact that I may fit another one at a later date in the other door. And yes, there is plenty of room to get extra cables in the conduit in the door frame as well. Measuring to fit this light bar from the outside of the van was proving entertaining. Trying to work with a curve, in fact trying to work over the top of a roof that I can't really get at, not really that easy. The centre point of the van is that aerial connection there. So that gives me a point that I can take as a point of reference, and I can project that up whilst dividing the distance between these pressing areas here. Gives me a point that I can stick a bit of tape to. That gives me a centre line of the van. The light bar is 840mm between fixings. So a bit of tape approximates me in the right place initially. 420mm from the centre line. And then it's just a matter of finding the distance that way. Again, as I said, measuring from the outside, not easy, but there is a ledge. Will it film? No. There is a ledge down there, part of the window fitting, and there is a point of reference there, which may not be incredibly accurate, but it provides a point of reference. So I've now got a couple of marks there and there, which are as near to parallel with the windscreen of the vehicle and central as I think I'm going to get, short of being able to get over the top of the van with some sort of scaffold tower that I can actually then measure off of the windscreen direct. So, next job, drill a couple of pilot holes, and I will then measure those down to the windscreen from the outside just to see how far out I can adjust them before I drill the holes any larger. But that point there and there, where the bolt's going to go, are ideal for me to put some lathes in the centre there, bonded to the van, another one probably dead centre, and it will start to give me a fixing point where I can then insulate the inside of this van ceiling and maintain the curve. It's not 100% necessary. I'm not really going to be using this space other than, well, this area here may get used, but obviously we've got this thing in the way, the air conditioning unit, and that's going to be probably full up with electrics in there because the pipework will prevent me using it as a cupboard. But this area here, potentially there is room there for a small cubby hole. But anyway, that's the next job, drill some holes. So there you go. I drilled a couple of pilot holes. They came out pretty much spot on the other side. I measured from the pilot hole down to the top of the windscreen and out to the gutters, and I'm happy with that. So I've now drilled the holes 8mm, and I've also drilled another 8mm hole for a grommet. I bought a pack of grommets so I get some that are perfect fit, and I put a temporary bolt in just to put the light bar up for the time being. I will be putting a longer bolt in when I come to secure the pieces of timber once I've actually made them. Same on the other side. End result, a light bar. It looks high, but it's actually level with the top of the roof when you actually sort of stand up at head height. And later on I will wire that up when it gets a bit darker and just check it works. But that's a convenient way just to provide a couple of bolt holes in that area of the roof that I can mount some timber on the inside, and it was a good excuse to fit a light bar as well. I've also mounted the external lights and run the cabling through grommets, and they're temporarily wired up as well, and I will test those again shortly as well. So there's a close-up of the actual installed light. N4 stainless steel screws. They're about 20mm long. A 6mm hole for the grommet for the cable. You can see now why they've chopped off one of the heatsink fins. It's just to allow room for the cabling. Little drop of sealant on the back of the light fitting in the proximity of the screw fitting, just to prevent any chance of water ingress through the riv nut. And that's the two of them. Well, three of them, including the one on the back door. There you go. That's all three lit up. I won't cover the wiring of these, they're just wired up temporarily at the moment. I'll deal with all that side of it later on in future videos, but I thought I'd just wire them up, check they all work. More than adequate for our normal use. In fact, they're not that much dimmer than the ones on the Sprinter. Yeah, I'm pleased with that. And he wants to go and find a bone.